Hey, it's Janelle Waz and welcome back for another video. You might remember a video I made not too long ago about my Nintendo 64 collection. While I enjoyed making the video and talking a little bit about each game that I own, what I really enjoyed was the comment section in that video. People reminiscing about their favorite N64 games and making some recommendations to me. But at heart, I am a Sega kid. I loved the Genesis, and because I had the benefit of older siblings growing up, the Genesis was my first game console. But in addition to the Genesis, we also had the Sega CD. For you see, back in the 90s, Sega tried to extend the life of the Sega Genesis by creating add-on consoles to plop the Genesis on top of. The Sega CD, which I have, and the 32X, which I don't have. We didn't have a whole lot of Sega CDs, but over the years, I acquired a fairly decent collection. So, let's talk about them. After all, it's not like Nintendo's going to make one.
You still don't have a Sega CD? What are you waiting for, Nintendo to make one?
Keep in mind that some of these games are open for future reviews, so I'm only going to talk about each one a little bit. First up is Dune, given to me by a very good friend. While the sci-fi video gaming conversation is often dominated by Star Wars or even Star Trek games, there is a small selection of Dune games, this being one of them. In this adventure strategy game, you play as Paul Atreides, destined to lead the Fremen, the native population of the planet Arrakis.
Also known as Dune.
The plot of the game loosely follows the movie, and presumably the book, which I haven't read. For example, the game does feature the death of Duke Leto Atreides like in the original story, but Paul and his mother, Lady Jessica, are never sent into exile. The goal of the game is to rally the Fremen to your side and fight off the opposing Harkonnen fortresses, and mine and supply the Emperor with spiced melange. The game has great visuals, especially when traveling. You can even ride a sandworm! That's pretty sweet.
Again, it is the legend.
The soundtrack is passable, but definitely doesn't compare to Toto's movie soundtrack. One of my favorite movie soundtracks, by the way. And even though the game is based off the David Lynch movie, only a selection of the characters look like their movie counterparts. And wow, Gurney looks terrifying. I guess they didn't have the rights to Patrick Stewart's likeness. Still, this is a fun game for anyone who likes Dune, or even if you want to introduce somebody to Dune, this is a decent game to do it. Next up is Ecco the Dolphin. Surprise, surprise! I did a review of Ecco the Dolphin for the Sega Genesis recently, which you all should check out by the way, and in addition to reviewing the game, I addressed the Genesis and Sega CD versions. I may do a more in-depth video comparing the two, but basically the Sega CD game is the same basic game as the Genesis, only barrier glyphs serve as checkpoints. There are a couple of dolphin fact glyphs, some new levels, and a vastly superior soundtrack compared to the original. Between the two versions, the Sega CD version is easier and probably the better game. I am planning on revisiting this topic, so I'm not going to dwell too long on Ecco in this video. Well, we've got Ecco out of the way, so next is, you guessed it, more Ecco! Ecco 2: The Tides of Time for the Sega Genesis was my first video game, and will always have a special place in my heart. And since I have the Sega CD version of the first game, it's reasonable to assume that I would also have the Sega CD version of Tides of Time. Again, I might have to do a video comparing the two versions, at least once I make the Tides of Time review, so I'm not going to dwell too long about this game in this video. I like that 3D rendered movies of various points of the first game are included in this game, but off the top of my head, there isn't a whole lot of difference between the two versions. There's an updated soundtrack, but to be honest, it pales in comparison to the original Tides of Time soundtrack. It's not bad by any means, but it just doesn't stick with me like the original Genesis soundtrack or the soundtrack of Ecco 1 for the Sega CD. I'll have to revisit this game on Sega CD in more detail before I give my final verdict. Next up, this is Jeopardy! Was there ever a more beloved game show host than Alex Trebek?
Welcome. Let's play Jeopardy.
I confess that I probably have more versions of Jeopardy than I care to admit. Oh, who am I kidding? I have multiple versions of Jeopardy. The selling point for this game is, of course, the FMV videos. Has Alex Trebek looked more real in a video game before? I think not. And what would an FMV Alex be without FMV contestants straight out of the 90s? Man, I want to be an FMV actor. It just looks like so much fun hamming it up like that. The game plays pretty much like a game of Jeopardy, with Alex giving you the categories. Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Government and politics.
Oh no, I'm not brave enough for politics.
Grab bag. History. Botany.
You wish you had gone into botany.
Colorful geography.
Contestant number 1.
And you answer questions with the occasional daily double thrown in. What I've noticed in older Jeopardy games is that it'll accept answers so long as the correct answer is entered in.
Wrong.
This clearly has been fixed for this game. Well, enough of that. Let's talk about a truly 90s classic, Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park was big in the 90s. The movie, so phenomenal, it inspired a sequel to a story that was meant to be only one book, and even retconned a few character deaths. Jurassic Park gaming was big in the 90s, including a couple of Sega Genesis games and a point-and-click adventure game for the Sega CD. Simply called Jurassic Park, but serving as a direct sequel, you play a nameless protagonist, presumably yourself, hired by InGen to go back to Isla Nublar to collect dinosaur eggs within 12 in-game hours, all while avoiding InGen rival Biosyn, who sabotaged your chopper. The game features a mixture of FMV footage and nice pixel art. Hey, how you doing?
That was awesome! But sorry about your car, man.
As a Jurassic Park fan, I do have a few complaints, like the visitor center being in much better condition than the last time we saw it. But you can't deny that this is pretty awesome. The game also features some dino facts by real-life paleontologist Dr. Robert T. Bacher, plenty of great dino graphics, and some of the most horrifying sounds when your character dies. But check out that soundtrack! But let's move on from a park full of dinosaurs to a moon full of trucks? Okay. Up next is Loadstar, The Legend of Tully Bodine. The plan was to make this game into a series, as the back of the case says it's the first episode in the epic story of Tully Bodine. Heck, the manual even has the option to buy t-shirts and caps. They were really putting their eggs in the Loadstar basket. But alas, this is the only Loadstar game. You play as this guy, Tully Bodine, a truck driver on the moon who Sheriff Ned Beatty is trying to run off the moon. No, I'm serious, that's Ned Beatty. Tully and his trusty Smiley computer have to smuggle camels off the moon? Wow, the 90s were truly a wondrous time for video games. The game plays like a rail shooter where you shoot these bots that run into your truck for speeding. You'll need to move out of the way of accidents or blow your horn to get the truck in front of you moving again, or else crash horribly. To be honest, I never got very far in this game, but I may try to pick this up again one day. But now for something a little more familiar, Sherlock Holmes.
The game is afoot.
Specifically Sherlock Holmes the Consulting Detective, Volume 1. This was another gift from a friend who happened to have an extra copy. There is another volume that I don't have, but this disc provides you with 3 mysteries to solve: the Mummy's Curse, the Mystified Murderess, and the Tin Soldier. I went with the Mummy's Curse for this video.
To the contrary, my dear Watson. I have made some inquiries, because I dare say I do believe this murderer is a much younger chap.
We're treated as some cheesy FMV as we go all over London asking people questions. This game kind of plops you down in the middle of London and lets you go without giving you a whole lot of direction. So you can start asking people random questions or take to the newspaper. Which is a rather dull experience, by the way. The least the game could do is give me a date to start looking at. I only took some quick footage of the game, but even someone like me who doesn't do a lot of murder mysteries can have fun with this game and even solve a case or two, or three. And now for a game that I'm sure most Sega CD owners have, Sewer Shark. For a while, Sewer Shark was bundled with the Sega CD, which probably explains why I haven't seen one with a Sega CD case. Whoa, a John Dykstra production? If you don't know who John Dykstra is, he's the guy who's responsible for this. In Sewer Shark, you play as a sewer jockey, cleaning the sewers of weird mutated rats for Solar City, essentially an island paradise city. You start the game with dog meat as your call sign.
Your call sign. Dog meat!
Which upgrades as the game goes on. You work for this guy, who you might recognize from a brief appearance in the Star Trek TNG episode Manhunt. Like Loadstar, this too is a rail shooter, only one that I've had more luck with. Simply clean the sewers of ratigators and these weird bats, and make turns when your robot assistant Catfish calls them out.
We got some hungry critters bearing thick.
What's with Sega CD games and weird robot sidekicks? The game is worth it for the cheese factor and is even pretty easy to find for cheap, unlike the 3DO version.
Relax. Pretend it's a game. Maybe it'll even be fun.
Next up is Silpheed. If you can imagine what a 3D version of Galaga would look like, that's Silpheed. The entire game feels like a 3D arcade game, which, to be honest, is a little disappointing. When I think of Sega CD games, I expect some cheesy FMV or something completely unique. After all, during the 90s, Sega was known for trying unique ideas. This just feels like your average arcade game with a 3D facelift and some improved sound. It's not terrible, but it's not particularly gripping either. I don't play this game more than 15 minutes at a time, and really I've only played it a few times. I suppose it's impressive that it had N64 quality graphics 2 years before the N64 came out, but to me, this game hasn't aged well. Granted, I love games that haven't aged well, but this one just doesn't stick with me. Speaking of games that haven't aged well, Stellar Fire. We had this growing up, but the disc wasn't working anymore, and I had to buy it again because of this on the back of the box. Introduction narrated by Michael Dorn. Star Trek The New Generation's Lieutenant Worf? Well, I'm sorry, Star Trek The New Generation? This game came out in 1993. Next Gen was on for 6 or 7 years at that point. How could you screw up the name?
The last of Earth's defenses are falling to the direction.
Michael Dorn does a pretty good job with the intro, but there is a problem with the intro. It's not really representative of the game. Now, if you were watching the intro and thought this was going to be a delightfully, cheesily, epic sci-fi adventure filled to the brim with FMV, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Sadly, most of the game looks like this. Polygons. The basic plot is that the Draxen, or cybernetic aliens, are conquering planets all over the place, and it's up to you to stop them from taking Earth. You do this by fighting them on their polygon moons and planet. In defense of this game's graphics, it's not far off from other games at the time. Look how Star Fox on the Super Nintendo looked. At the same time, this is just another game that didn't age all that well, and there's just not enough in this game to keep me coming back for more. Maybe if there was more of a plot or characters, I would think differently. Well, maybe if I try to get further in the game, my opinion will change. But for right now, this is just another game in my collection. Now, I know it seems like I've been kinda harsh on the last couple of games, so let's talk about something I do like. Tomcat Alley. What I love about this game is that it's entirely an FMV. In-game movies, FMV. Actual gameplay, FMV. I've said before how I love interactive movies like Star Trek Klingon and Star Trek Borg, and when it comes to Sega CD games, interactive movies are top tier for me. You play a Navy pilot trying to stop the former Soviet Union from selling off their weapons and
threatens the entire Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, the cheese is strong with this game and I love it. And check out those graphics in the video. That's some fine quality 90s effects there. Outside the movies, the game is a flight sim that requires you to interact with various points on the screen within a short amount of time. You only control the pointer on your screen while the game does the flying for you, though you will have to select certain waypoints to fly towards. Some may criticize this game for its grainy video, but to me, it feels more authentic than a lot of games out there. I know there's a person on the screen, not a bunch of pixels and polygons. I've only gotten a few levels into this game, so this is one I definitely want to revisit. Okay, we had a palate cleanser with Tomcat Alley, but now we're going back to the criticism. Arguably the stupidest game in my collection is Trivial Pursuit. Why is it stupid, you may ask? Well, I'll show you. You start up the game, you enter your name, you pick what color piece you want, the works. Then it asks you a question, which you presumably answer out loud among witnesses. The game reveals the answer, and you have to say if you got it right or wrong. So, it does nothing to stop cheating. Why even bother making a game at that point? Why couldn't it accept a text input like Jeopardy? Put a time limit and text input. What's so hard about that? On the plus side, it does have some decent animations, so I guess it's not a complete loss. And now we're at the last game in my collection, Wheel of Fortune. Similar to the Jeopardy game from earlier, the Sega CD Wheel of Fortune features FMV video of Vanna White as well as the contestants. Some of these contestants look strangely familiar. There are some new contestants thrown in, some of which I would have liked to have seen in Jeopardy just for that cheesy 90s appeal. Weirdly enough, you get the option to name the computer contestants, so I picked this guy and named him Stu. He looks like a stew. The game plays like you would expect. You spin the wheel, you pick a letter, and you're either right or wrong. And if you're wrong, the other players get a turn.
There are 3 P's.
What are the 3 P's?
Price, price, and price.
I love that Vanna just walks past the letters and doesn't even flip them. Telekinetic Vanna White, if you will. I was able to figure out pretty early on that the puzzle was Apprentice Plumber. But every time I tried to solve, I couldn't pick any letters. After the 3rd time, this prompted me to rage quit. Well, okay, mildly annoyed quit. Maybe I have to go over the game manual to figure out what I'm doing wrong, but either way, this is a pretty standard Wheel of Fortune game. I'm a bigger fan of Jeopardy myself, so I don't really revisit this game all that much. And that's my Sega CD collection. Kinda ended on a whimper rather than a bang, but I enjoyed revisiting some of my favorite Sega CD games, and I'm excited about reviewing a couple of them. Now, what do you think? Did you have a Sega CD growing up, or did you acquire one later on? Did you play any of the games in my collection? What are some of your favorite Sega CD games? And are there any games you would like to see me tackle in a review, or do you have any recommendations? Please leave a comment. As always, thanks for tuning in to another video. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
Relax! Pretend it's a game.